If this were made today, it would be a CGI-laden affair shot on a studio set.
Just what you've been waiting for. Movies, TV, music, and more. Follow, subscribe, stay up to date. Episodes drop every other Monday. It's the Matt, watch that. It's the Matt, watch that. It's the Matt, watch that podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Matt Watch That podcast, the place for reviews, rants, and randomness. I'm your host, Matt Seroski, filmmaker, film fan. Each episode, I'm going to watch a movie or TV pilot that I probably should have seen but never got around to. It could be a recent favorite, critic's choice, or cult classic. To join in on the conversation, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, at Matt Seroski. You can subscribe to my YouTube page where I'll post videos and clips from the show. If you have any opinions on what I've discussed, or suggestions as to what I should see next, use the hashtag MattWatchThat on social. Before we start, we are celebrating the summer on this episode. As a film fan, I always look forward to this season because studios would go all out, scheduling their tentpole movies to get audiences lined up for opening weekend from Memorial Day to Labor Day. The box office has seen a resurgence with Top Gun Maverick, Barbenheimer, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which made executives everywhere hopeful about the summer box office. The season started out strong, with Bad Boys: Ride or Die, with $56 million. A few days later, Pixar's Inside Out 2 racked up $155 million on the opening weekend. It looks like the studios are betting on sequels to save their hides, with more coming down the pike. A Quiet Place Day 1, Despicable Me 4, Twisters, Deadpool and Wolverine, Alien Romulus, and Beetlejuice. It hasn't always been this way. The summer used to be prime real estate to launch new and exciting films that captivated audiences. Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1981 introduced us to archaeologist Indiana Jones. Die Hard in 1988 followed New York City police detective John McClane getting caught up in a terrorist plot. Speed from 1994 revved the audience's engines and made stars out of Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. Will Smith became King of the 4th of July with the releases of Independence Day and Men in Black in back-to-back summers of 1996 and 97. Other notable movies that were released during this season were dramas In the Line of Fire, Apollo 13, and Saving Private Ryan, horror Alien, animated Who Framed Roger Rabbit, romance When Harry Met Sally, fantasy adventure Back to the Future, comedy Ghostbusters, and science fiction flick Jurassic Park. And of course, the one that started it all, the summer blockbuster Jaws, which kept people out of the water and into the movie theaters. On to the main attraction. Each review will end with a ranking out of 5 stars. 1 star is skip it, 2 stars watch at your own risk, 3 stars standard fare, 4 stars worth checking out, and 5 stars must see. Now, if I give a title 5 stars, it doesn't mean I'm comparing it to Casablanca, Jaws, or Seinfeld. I rank titles based on other movies or TV series in that genre and at that time period. On this episode of the podcast, I'll be reviewing Romancing the Stone from 1984. It was directed by Rob Zemeckis, who helmed comedy Used Cars, adventure fantasy Back to the Future, and subsequent sequels, the live-action animation hybrid Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and the survival drama Castaway. He won an Academy Award for Best Director of another Tom Hanks feature, Forrest Gump. The screenplay was written by Diane Thomas. While working at a cafe, she pitched the idea for this movie to her customer, Michael Douglas, who bought the script, along with a latte and scone. This is her only professional writing credit, as she died in a car accident in 1985, though she completed a draft for a sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. She was a graduate from UCLA, who created the Diane Thomas Screenwriting Award in her honor. It stars Kathleen Turner as romance novelist Joan Wilder. She made her television debut on soap opera The Doctors as Nola Aldrich for 243 episodes. She made a big splash on the big screen in erotic thriller Body Heat, written and directed by Lawrence Kasdan. This made her an instant in-demand actress, but to prevent typecasting, her next role was in comedy The Man with Two Brains. She would bounce between genres with thriller Crimes of Passion, crime comedy Pritzi's Honor, fantasy Peggy Sue Got Married, and provided the voice of Jessica Rabbit in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. She's been nominated for an Academy Award, Grammy, 2 Tonys, and has won 2 Golden Globes. Michael Douglas portrays survivalist Jack T. Colton. His first major acting role was on the television series The Streets of San Francisco as Inspector Steve Keller for 5 seasons, 98 episodes. His father, Kirk Douglas, purchased the rights to the novel One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and starred in an adaptation on Broadway. He gifted the rights to Michael, who produced the movie, which won 5 Academy Awards. He would finance and star in disaster film The China Syndrome with Jane Fonda and Jack Lemmon. One of the biggest stars in Hollywood, he appeared in musical A Chorus Line, erotic thrillers Fatal Attraction and Basic Instinct, romantic drama The American President, and crime drama Traffic. He won an Academy Award as Best Actor in a leading role for Wall Street. Romancing the Stone also features Danny DeVito in a supporting role. The three would team up for 1989's The War of the Roses. This is something to look out for. The treasure map was designed by puzzle columnist Dr. Krypton, also known as Paul Hoffman, CEO of the Liberty Science Center in New Jersey. So let's jump into it. Joan Wilder is a best-selling romance writer who spins tales about heroine Angelina and her ruggedly handsome love interest Jesse. After the completion of her latest novel, she celebrates the achievement with her cat Romeo and a travel-sized alcohol bottle in her New York City apartment. The next morning, she goes to meet her publisher when she receives a mysterious package from her brother-in-law Eduardo, who was recently killed in Colombia, where he lived with her sister Elaine. Upon returning to her apartment, Joan finds it ransacked. She receives a frantic call from her sister, who's been kidnapped by antique smugglers. She instructs Joan to open the package from Eduardo and bring the El Corazon treasure map to Hotel Cartagena in Colombia in exchange for her sister's safe return. She takes the first flight out, and on her way to her final destination, she's accosted by a corrupt cop who attempts to rob her, but Joan is saved by ruggedly handsome survivalist Jack T. Colton, who begrudgingly agrees to help find her sister. Here's a quote without context. "Now I ain't cheap, but I can be had." Romancing the Stone was a fun ride. Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner played their parts to perfection. The arc of Joan Wilder from meek isolationist to confident adventurer was interesting to watch. It's apparent from the moment they meet, there would be a turn in their relationship from reluctant allies to romantic partners. The majority of the film was shot in the jungles of Mexico, and being on location makes a huge difference to the realism of the story. If this were made today, it would be a CGI-laden affair shot on a studio set. Now, if you're a writer, you'll appreciate the pacing of this movie. It's a classic screenplay format. By around 15 minutes, the main characters are established, we know the story and their motivations, you can spot the end of Act 1, the midpoint of Act 2, and the start of Act 3 leading to the movie's climax. This could be taught in film school. It was paint-by-numbers screenplay. Now for a little trivial trivia. Michael Douglas and Danny DeVito were roommates while starting out in New York City. When Douglas booked the part on the television series The Streets of San Francisco, he had to move out to the West Coast. He continued to pay rent on their Manhattan apartment. Romancing the Stone was distributed by 20th Century Fox. It was filmed at Zion National Park in Utah, Veracruz, Mexico, and Huasca de Ocampo, Hidalgo, also in Mexico. The cinematography was captured by Dean Cundy, whose filmography includes horror classic Halloween, musical comedy Rock and Roll High School, family remake The Parent Trap, and action-adventure Jurassic Park. He was nominated for Best Cinematography for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It was edited by Don Camburn, who worked on action comedies Hooper and The Cannonball Run, fantasy comedy Ghostbusters 2, and sports movies Rookie of the Year, Major League 2, and Little Giants. And Frank Morris, who's known for crime drama Blue Thunder, family flick Short Circuit, and action comedy Bird on a Wire. They were nominated for Best Film Editing for this movie. The score was composed by Alan Silvestri, who wrote the music for comedy Summer Rental, Chuck Norris action flick The Delta Force, family film Flight of the Navigator, sci-fi adventure The Abyss, and comic book movies Captain America: The First Avenger, The Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. He's been nominated for 2 Academy Awards for Best Music Original Score of Forrest Gump and Original Song in The Polar Express. This was the first collaboration between Zemeckis and Silvestri, and the composer has written the music for every one of his films. The runtime is 1 hour 46 minutes. It had a budget of $10 million and grossed $115 million at the box office. It was nominated for 1 Oscar at the 1985 Academy Awards. A sequel followed, The Jewel of the Nile, directed by Louis Teague, with Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner, and Danny DeVito reprising their roles. As an added bonus, I've also watched this movie, and will be giving some brief thoughts, as well as a rating. Joan Wilder and Jack T. Colton have hit a rut in their relationship. While he enjoys sailing their boat around Europe, she is experiencing some writer's block, and eager to get back to New York. At a book signing, Joan is approached by Omar Khalifa, who offers her a job of writing his biography. After she accepts, she travels with him down the Nile in Africa. But when Jack discovers that Omar is a brutal dictator, he teams up with reformed criminal Ralph to rescue Joan. A couple of worthwhile notes. The cinematography was captured by Jan de Bont, who would go on to direct action flicks Speed and Twister. Jack Nietzsche joined the production to compose the score, after working with Douglas on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The title track, When the Going Gets Tough, the Tough Get Going, was performed by Billy Ocean. It would peak at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and reach number 1 in the UK. On the Ski Index, I give it 4 out of 5 stars. A fun little romp. Its sequel, The Jewel of the Nile, didn't fare as well. 3, maybe 3.5 stars. If you've seen Romancing the Stone or The Jewel of the Nile and have opinions on the movie, let me know what you think using the hashtag MattWatchThat. Moving right along, each episode, I'm going to post clips that I think people should watch. It could be movie trailers, music videos, interviews, or something completely random. Search for my YouTube page and there'll be a playlist called Matt Watch That Playback. During the summer season, the biggest musical acts would come into town to perform for an adoring crowd. It's been a while since I've gone to a show. The last one was before the pandemic. I believe it was Slipknot. I don't think that's going to be my last concert ever, but going to shows has certainly lost its luster. When you watch footage from the 70s, 80s, or 90s, people are invested in the shows. Clapping, singing, moshing. Now, it's a sea of cell phones for the entirety of the show, just so people can put clips on social media for the likes and clicks. No one knows how to be in the moment anymore. But because of some of those clips, I've been able to see some of my favorite bands performing recently, and I have to say, it's not pretty. All the drugs and alcohol have finally caught up to these lead singers, and they sound like a cat in heat. There are some bands that I wished I saw in their prime. Guns N' Roses, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam. I also wish that I got into 80s bands earlier so I could have seen them. The Cars, Huey Lewis and the News, Tears for Fears, Eurythmics. But I've mentioned it before, my favorite concert was Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. They started with Running Down a Dream, and ran through all the hits to a finale with the solo single You Wreck Me, and an encore of Free Fallin' and American Girl. It was at the Jones Beach Theater, which is the best venue to see a live show. It's outdoors, right on the water, so on those hot summer nights you get a cool breeze from the bay. Granted, it is rain or shine, and when the heavens open up, it comes a-pouring down. There was one show that my brothers and I went to, which featured Pat Benatar, who was amazing, Fleetwood Mac, but by this time, Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham, and Christine McVie had left, so there was Billy Burnett, Dave Mason, and Becca Bramlett, along with Mick Fleetwood and John McVie. And then the Steve Miller Band, who performed 8.5-minute guitar solos in every single song. And by that time, our shoes were filled with water. We're like, we're done with this. The only concert in my life where I left early. But what are some of your favorite concerts and venues? Hit me up on social using the hashtag MattWatchThat, and I'm going to select a couple of clips from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and post it on the Matt Watch That playback playlist on YouTube. Check it out. Now it's time for the recommendation. Yes, that's the word recommendation with Matt in the middle. I'm going to end each podcast with my own recommendation of a movie or TV series. Today I'm talking about Jaws. It tells the story of Police Chief Martin Brody, whose beach town of Amity Island is being terrorized by a great white shark. And to save the summer season, he hires local shark hunter Quint and oceanographer Matt Hooper, and together they board the orca to catch and kill the shark. It stars Roy Scheider, known for his roles in The French Connection and Marathon Man, Robert Shaw of A Man for All Seasons and The Sting fame, and Richard Dreyfuss from Close Encounters of the Third Kind and The Goodbye Girl. It also features Lorraine Gary as Ellen Brody, Murray Hamilton as Mayor Larry Vaughn, and Jeffrey Kramer as Deputy Hendricks. I'm not sure there's anything I can impart that hasn't been said about this movie from film historians and fans of all ages. It's my absolute favorite film. I think it's cinematic perfection, except for the continuity of barrels on the orca. It includes one of the best moments in movies ever captured, when Quint tells a story of being aboard the USS Indianapolis. It was at the suggestion of Howard Sackler, a Navy veteran familiar with the story. He was an uncredited script consultant on Jaws, and said they needed a scene which explained the character of Quint. An initial draft of the speech was created, and Spielberg felt it needed more work. He asked other writers to take a crack at it, including Bob Gale, who scribed Back to the Future, Paul Schrader, who penned Taxi Driver, and John Milius, who wrote Conan the Barbarian. But Robert Shaw, who was noted for being a novelist, playwright, and screenwriter himself, came up with the final version that was seen in the film. A couple of other interesting notes. The shark has only 4 minutes of screen time, but the ominous score by John Williams gave the impression that it was always looming. The line, "You're gonna need a bigger boat," was ad-libbed by Roy Scheider. Peter Benchley, author of the novel, appears in a cameo as a reporter on the beach. Decades later, Lee Fierro, who played Mrs. Kittner, walked into a restaurant and an item on the menu caught her eye, the Alex Kittner sandwich. She commented to the waiter that she had played his mother in the movie. As she was leaving, the owner of the restaurant rushed out and identified himself as Jeffrey Voorhees, the actor who played her son, Alex Kittner. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many news outlets would compare political figures who buried their heads in the sand to Mayor Vaughn, who was hesitant to close the beach community due to economic and political pressure. Upon its release, Jaws reached $100 million in an unprecedented 38 days, and was the first film to reach that plateau. Made for less than $9 million, it would go on to gross $260 million domestically and $470 million worldwide. It still ranks in the all-time top 150 and stands at number 7 when adjusted for inflation. There isn't another movie out there that truly encapsulates the summer blockbuster than Jaws. That's all for this edition of Matt Watch That. Thanks for listening to me babble. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Matt Seroski. You can subscribe to my YouTube page where I'll post videos and clips from the show. If you have any opinions on what I've discussed or suggestions as to what movie or TV pilot I should see, use the hashtag MattWatchThat on social. Head over to mattseroski.com for all the latest news and updates, and come back next time for the reviews, rants, and randomness. Fantasy comedy Grossbusters. Okay, that could be an interesting concept.